Hey, in this video I'll be showing you how to export your 3D CAD model into Unity and then showing you how to set up some controls so you can navigate around your model properly. Also, apply some materials, some lighting, some vegetation and some immersive techniques such as bloom and vignetting to create some more atmosphere in your scene. And then finally, build it to your Windows or Mac so you can open it up anywhere. If you want to follow along to this workshop, I'll put a link for a download of the OBJ file and materials used, as well as links to downloading Unity and Rhino. I'm going to be doing a lot more workshops in virtual reality and augmented reality for architecture, so please subscribe if you're interested in that and enjoy the video. So there's only really three things quickly that you need to just do to import an OBJ file from Rhino. So the Rhino has a surface direction, but it's not really good at telling you which direction you've drawn it in. And you want them all projecting outwards, because when they go into Unity, if it's the wrong way, it's see-through. So the object is there, but you can't see it. So yeah, you have to make sure that the surface direction is facing outwards, or the way that you want to look at it. So you need to put on a global box mapping. Which is here, yeah. So if you're not using a material, if you're using a tiled material, you need to apply just a global box mapping. So that wasn't a great example. Just a really rough one, and just cover it all and use the global coordinates up in the top left. Just go yes, yes, yes. It's fine if you're using like a homogeneous texture or whatever, but if it's a tiled one, your bricks will be on one way and on another surface another way. So the way to get rid of that is just with the global box mapping. And then the last thing that you need to do when you're about to export it is some of the settings in the OBJ folder. They might be automatic, but they weren't for me the first time. So export selected as an OBJ, and then here we go. In the naming, you want export Rhino object names as OBJ objects, and then layers as OBJ groups. The one more thing you need to do is the units of it. So if you will work in millimeters, but Unity works in meters. So if you don't change the units of it, when you import the model, it'll be 1,000 times bigger, and it will just mess everything up. So change it to meters, and then when you click OK, it gives you, I've already done it, but it says, do you want to scale it by whatever? Just click no, because then it will just scale it by 1,000 in here. But change it to meters, because that's how Unity works. Okay. So select the model and drag it into the model view, and you end up with something like that. Okay, so firstly what you need to do is orientate the coordinates of it to 0, and that's done in the inspector. So if you select on the model, you've got the model selected, and then if you've got inspector selected and you have transform, something that looks like that, yeah? All right, and then the positioning of it, change the XYZ all to 0. And this is an object that's not moving anywhere. We're not putting any sort of scripting on it. It's a static object, so the first thing, just click static. And then Unity knows that when it's projecting light onto it, it's just better for it to calculate a still object than one that might be moving. So with the model selected, this is displaying a lot of information about the Zaha model, and we really don't have to mess with much of it. It's just here it says generate light map UVs. Click that one, and also click generate colliders, and then click apply. Those two, especially the colliders one, is really important because that gives physicality to the object. So when we have a character in there later and we click on the preview the game mode, they'll fall for it. It gives the material a physical collision. Great. So we'll put the character controller in it now. So up here it says Asset Store. So that's like an extension library basically. You can download loads of objects and scripts. And then type in standard assets. Something that I like to do, up here you've got the game display. So you've got scene, game, asset store. Just pull that game out and pop it there. So if you look in standard assets down here, there's a lot going on in it. And we'll get through a bit of it. But for now, go to character, first person, prefabs. So these are pre-written objects or controls or anything like that. And then this one, FPS controller, go drag that into your hierarchy. So if you orientate that into a view, and then these at the top here, can you see these different sort of handles? That when you've got an object selected, that's how you would move it about and what have you. So I'm going to twist mine and give it the right height so it's looking at the model. You know this game panel, just at the top here, maximize on play. And then if we want to, yeah, you got it? Yeah, I have that. Click play, and then that will bring up a little preview of what it's like. Yeah, so select it, and then in the inspector, I clicked off head bob. So whatever you like, but wouldn't go mental. Just pull it up a little bit. That's just a personal preference of mine, just because I just think it's just a little bit too slow. And I also unticked the audio because we're not using it. Because you can hear the footsteps. Not in here, but maybe with headphones on or something, or in your room, you can hear the and that's, you just don't really want that if you're in a crit or whatever. It's just a personal preference that I would just think. So now when you walk around it, it's just a little bit quicker and a lot more smooth. If you go to the USB folder that I gave you, and go to materials, and then copy materials display, and then find your Unity file system, wherever you saved it. Where did I save mine? And then paste that into assets. All good? And then when you click back onto your Unity, in the assets, there it is. In assets, materials display, and we've got some there. So Great. If you select the object group Windows, this is where, seriously, like, that exporting the right way is just so handy. And just drag that into over the windows. We started with a translucent texture. So just, let's do the same for the ground. So select the floor, that's what it's called in the hierarchy, and then drag that concrete material over it. And you can see that the scale is wildly incorrect. So have you all got this and the floor selected? So in the inspector channel, you can see at the bottom it says the shader. That's what they call materials, right? And there's a little drop down arrow to bring up the information about it, the material. You got that? Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And have you got this, basically? And I gave it a little test. So we need to change the scale of it, which is the tiling, and put in 30, 30. And then that's changed the scale of it. So did you guys drag the white metal onto the building? And then we're going to change the type of material it is, or shader, as they call it. So where it says shader, drop down, go to mobile, bump diffuse, and then that brings up an option to put a normal map on it. Yeah, everyone good? So, yeah, and then go to mobile and go bump diffuse. So everyone got that? Oof. Yeah? Okay, and for the tiling for this one, put in 140. It's quite a subtle change. Does that show up on this screen? It looks on mine all right. When it's rendered and it's in the game view, then the qualities do come out a lot more. So under here it says normal map in the material inspector. You've got the option to put a normal map in. So just drag that one, that white metal normal map, into there. And that brings the texture through to the material, and copy and paste the same XY tiling. Okay, so I've just dragged a skybox into my scene, as you can see, because we're going to start building the atmosphere now, and starting with the skybox. There's quite an effect on it already, so I'll show you how to do that quickly. I just found the skybox for free in the asset store. So if you go ahead and type in Skybox, and you can get free or paid assets, but we can just put down this price range to 0, and it will only show us the free ones. There's loads to pick here, so what sort of scene you want to create, you can choose from a lot of different skyboxes, and I went for the Wispy Skybox. So when it loads, go ahead and import that into your Unity, and then you'd find it down here in your assets, materials, and whichever one you'd like, you just drag it into the scene. If it doesn't display, you can check in your lighting tab that your skybox is set, and then in your FPS controller and your first person character, you can just check that the environment lighting is set to skybox. So there you have it. It's looking quite nice. Maybe a bit dark. But for now, what we're going to do, still on the FPS controller with first person character selected, we're going to go and add some atmospheric effects such as bloom and vignetting. And how we're going to do that is go down to component, image effect, and we'll start with the bloom. So select bloom. And you can see down in the game preview that that's made quite an impression already. Here we are. So make sure that you've got the inspector up, and this will give you the options to edit the bloom effect. So we'll do a preview. This is with bloom effect. You can see that it's given it a softer light around the edges of the building. It's a lot softer and lighter as compared to removing the bloom. You can see down here, just brings out a lot of brightness and softness to the build. It's a really nice effect. So now go to component, image effect again. Just going to have to find it. Let's have a look. Okay, image effect, camera, vignette. This is quite a subtle one, but it's something that you would include in a Photoshop render. It's essentially the same thing, and it just darkens the edges, focuses your eye more into the center of the scene. So if we go ahead and preview that, it's quite a subtle change, but the two combined, they bring a lot of life to the scene with really quite minimal effort. And we could turn up the vignetting a tad if we want. So you can see down here, yeah, it makes the scene a little bit darker. Pardon me. So you may want to go to your directional light and just pull up the intensity a little bit. That might be too much. Maybe something to like that. So this is a preview with both those effects on. And then we go back to first person controller. Just untick these. This is with the effects turned off, and it's just a lot more flat. Still looks like an output that a CAD model would display, but it's turning into more of a stylized scene. So I think it'd be nicer if the interior space of the build had a bit more light into it. It's looking quite dark. You can't really see the detailing in there. So we can just add a simple point light by going game object light point light. So we'll just orientate that into the interior, and that just gives it a global lighting. It doesn't produce any shadows, and it goes through objects, but that's just going to bring a bit more light into the scene. And I'm going to copy paste that and just drag another one, yeah, a bit further down. And what we could do is just change the colours of these in the inspector panel. Yeah. And I'll just soften the light so it just looks a bit more natural instead of a really bright white, which you wouldn't like in an interior space. You want something with a bit more glow. So if we preview that now, you can see the interior is just a bit more lit up. It's easier to just see the features in there. It doesn't take a lot of effort. It's quite effective. So now we're going to add a base terrain around this model just to bring up some of the context, make it look a bit more lively, and start adding in some trees and some vegetation with a wind script so that it will move. The trees will bluster, and so will the grass in your scene. So if you go game object again, 3D object, terrain, and that just brings up just a plain shape, and I'm going to center it just underneath my model so it doesn't interfere with my ground plane. And then we're going to start sculpting some terrain. So here in the inspector panel there's this icon with the up arrows, and that brings up a set of brushes. You want to put the opacity quite far down because it is sensitive, and maybe the brush size up just to get some indicative sort of hills. And you can see it's just bringing up some land mass. It's kind of easy to go overboard with this, so it's good to have the opacity down. And if we just preview that quick, show you what it does, you just see some land mass starting to form. It's just quite a conceptual way to start building up some context around your model. It's not OS data or anything, but I think as you're seeing, your architecture in here is a spatial thing. I don't think that matters too much. So just a bit more maybe. You can start to see it down here. And might bring that up a bit higher. Whoa. Do that bit. Just draw that piece, make it a little bit more in. See what that looks like. It's a really sophisticated tool. If you think about it, it's not really a CAD software that can do that. There we go. And these brushes offer you some different textures. I think I'm going to remove it, but if you've got a hard terrain, we're going for some hills, just a rolling landscape. But if it was like a rocky terrain, that sort of brings up a really harsh, bumpy sort of texture. So when we installed the standard assets, that also came with some materials, and some ground materials more importantly. I'm just going to have to try and find physical. Ooh, no. Terrain assets? No. Yes. So in environment terrain assets, surface texture, go ahead and select the terrain, and then up here there's a brush tool. It's the middle tool. It's not that one, sorry. It's the little one with a little water droplet. No, it's not. Yes, it is. It's the one with a little water droplet. It's the third one in. And I'm going to select this grass hill. So if you go ahead and select this brush and go edit texture, add texture, we can just drag, I'm going to choose the grass one and just drag that in here and press OK. So it just tiles on this grass effect. The light is still baking in this scene, so I may just pause the video here and wait until we've got some proper lighting in here. Or I can just turn off the lights up here and continue. Yeah, that's smarter. And what we could do is, if we wanted to just sort of break up this homogeneous texture, we can add another texture here and then select it, and because we've got a brush up, you can see that that's just painting in this new texture that we have. And just turn the opacity up a bit actually, and maybe make it a texture brush. Yeah. So that's just giving some variation to the scene. You could put a lot of detail into this if you wanted to. Now I've done that, I would probably change this ground texture here, but for this purpose of this workshop, you understand. So the next icon here, these two little trees, and again in the standard assets, what they've given you is this selection of Prefab Trees. So select the terrain, go edit tree, add tree, just like we would with a material. Go drag that in, and now we can just paint with this brush in some trees. But I'm going to turn the opacity way down, and same with the brush size. We can have a variation of scale of the trees. You see that opacity is way too much, and it's really not even that much. I'm going to knock it down more, maybe to 5, and we can just start popping in some trees. It's a really quick way to cover a lot. As you see in the game preview, it gives you this automatic update. Let's put some over here. And we can add more trees. So let's go here. Put that in. Select the terrain, and then select this one. And we've got the variation going on there. There you go. You can just see that building up over the profile of the building. Okay, so I just went ahead and paused to let the light bake properly there so we can get a good preview of what's going on. It took about 10 minutes. That might vary depending on how powerful your PC is. But now we can look in the game preview at these trees and the terrain that we've just put in, along with the model. And we can see that the trees have no animation on them yet, they're still static. So if we go ahead and select the terrain, which we have selected, and then in the inspector, just type in, go add component and type in wind zone. So that's just a bit of script to simulate wind over the trees. Actually quite far away. Whoa. We can see that it's way too powerful right now. Just as a first setting is 1. So on the main, I'm going to put that down to 0.2. See how powerful that is and what effect that has on the trees. It's actually still quite powerful. I think maybe just a bit lower. We don't want it to distract really from what we're doing. We just want it there. Oh. Just as like a subtle effect. And let's see what that does. Yeah. That's a lot nicer. It might actually be too weak now. But you can see they're just gently moving. Might actually turn that up a little bit. Let's try 0.1. Let's go for it. Is it going to work? Oh, 0.01. Okay, 0.1 on the main setting of the wind script. There you go. That's nicer. The graphics aren't that great now. It's only in preview, so it will be a much lower version than it will be when you build the scene. There you go. They look much nicer. Okay. I'm just going to move this terrain to here. The trees are too far away. That's better. That's it. Nice gentle breeze. Okay, so with the terrain selected, we are now going to add some grass, and it's the same Same process as we did for the materials and the trees. This icon here, edit details, add grass texture, and then in the standard assets, environment, terrain assets, billboard textures. So we can just go add this in, and this is a 2D object. And that is just a lot better on your processing power. Whoa. Going to turn that opacity down. Something like that. Woof. It's still huge. I'm going to turn the brush size down as well. There, it's more controllable. I'm just going to embed the trees a little bit more. If you want to remove any, just hold shift down and that takes some away. So I've got some on the overspilling. So we can go ahead, pardon me, just have a look. The light's baking again, so it's a bit darker in the scene, but we can still see them for now, and they've got a nice sort of sway to them. They're quite tall, but I guess it's wild grass, who knows. You can scale them if you want, which is just here, and just put that down to half maybe. Could just check to see if my controller, yeah, he's all over the, could raise it up a bit more maybe. See that changing down there. So now once you're happy with it, what's left to do to create an Exe file or a file for Mac is to go to File, Build Settings, select your platform, so Mac, PC, that's what we need right now. There's not a lot else that you'll need to do. Click Build and Run. Save it where you'd like to save it. And then click Save. I'm just going to name it something different. And just let that build. And you should be there, and then you can open that up anytime that you like. And I'll show you what that's like now. Hey, so here's the final product. I hope you like it and you've enjoyed this video and found it useful. If you have any questions, please let me know. And please subscribe to my channel. I have a lot more content coming. Thank you very much.